Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LO3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment. And today's date is Saturday, March 28th, 2020. Yep, so, nice and brisky out here in Albuquerque. Not in this actual city, more suburban area. For the time being, just try to take care of some business. Things are coming along, and hopefully everyone's safe where you at. You to my beautiful brothers and sisters in South Florida, still love you guys, all right, and beyond. Keep it real simple here. Well, it looks like today, originally I got this from the Activist Post, and it originally came from Mises.org. And this is mainly about big government, health, and police state, pertaining to COVID-19, of course. Canada has abolished civil liberties in the name of safety. To limit the spread of COVID-19 in Canada, the federal government has advised Canadians to stay at home and limit their contact with others if they have been diagnosed with the virus, exposed to someone who has, or if they traveled outside the country within the past 14 days. However, on March 21st, Patty Hajdu, Canada's Minister of Health, promised more draconian measures if people do not accept government's recommendations, which means that government's recommendations are actually command backed by the use of force, which has already begun. In Quebec City, police arrested a woman Friday who was infected with the virus and who was walking around outside after being mandated to stay indoors. The arrest was the first time Quebec City's public health director issued an order to police under emergency powers granted after Premier François Legault declared a public health emergency on March 14th. Dr. Horacio Arruda, the province's chief medical officer, told reporters Saturday that regional health directors across the province will have no problem ordering police to make arrests and ensure carrying the virus are isolated. In Ontario, the provincial police issued a notice Friday warning people that they could face fines of $750 if they defy the expert advice provided by the Chief Medical Officer of Health to close certain businesses and institutions and limit gatherings to 50 people or less. Corporations defying orders can face a fine of $500,000. That's like the same old routine by the World Health Organization, if you could connect the dots, right? Saskatchewan, people not following isolation orders can also face fines or arrest. Make a look under civil liberties, section 2 of Canada's Constitution of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms states that everyone has a freedom of assembly and freedom of association. To forcibly confine someone in their home is to deny them these freedoms. However, section 1 of the Charter said that these freedoms are subject only to reasonable limits prescribed by law, as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. This means the Charter is a sham because the government reserves the right to arbitrarily decide when it will grant civil liberties and when it will deny them. Thus, Health Minister Hajdu said, when people are playing loose and hard within the rules, this does actually put our civil liberties at jeopardy. It makes government have to look at more and more stringent measures to actually contain people in their own homes. So it's funny because when it comes to civil rights and civil liberties, it was decided by government, an institution. That's why I believe in natural rights. Okay? If you believe in the Creator or not, we have these natural born rights on being free and making decisions. Okay, so that's why you always gotta be careful when you use civil rights. I recommend you folks go to Black's Law Dictionary. It should explain what civil rights means. Okay, and natural rights. So Definitely good to look at. And okay, in other words, Haju is telling us that our civil liberties will remain intact as long as we obey the government's quarantine orders. However, she fails to acknowledge that this is a quarantine order itself which violates civil liberties by presuming to restrict freedom of assembly or association. Moreover, even without quarantine orders, as a significant loss of civil liberties occurred when the government prohibited large gatherings and ordered many private businesses shut down. Therefore, to disobey a government quarantine order is not the act which it gives the rise a loss of civil liberties, but simply reflects an attempt by individuals to exercise few civil liberties they have left. Has it occurred to the health minister and the various provincial authorities that their draconian measures may be counterproductive? When people read about arrests, fines, and forcible confinement, it is not likely that many of them will be discouraged for seeking a diagnosis, fearing that a positive test will put them in the crosshairs of the authorities. Is it possible that a positive test would otherwise prompt them to voluntarily isolate themselves? Perhaps not 100% isolation, but close to it. In contrast, when they face with the jackboot of government, many people may simply skip the test and convince themselves that they don't have a coronavirus and thus make little effort to isolate themselves. It's interesting about civil liberties that I've taken the time to look at their Canadian Constitution. And even though they got Section 2, here's Section 1 as well. I know Section 7, excuse me. There's always talking about limited stuff, but the question I have is, well, like of course, we could go with mobility rights, okay? It's like Section 6(1). Every citizen of Canada has the right to enter, remain, and leave Canada, of course, or move and gain livelihood. It's a subsection 2 of that. Every citizen of Canada and every person who has the status of permanent resident of Canada has the right to move up and take up residence in any province and to pursue gaining a livelihood in any province. So those could be contradiction. And of course, they have a limitation, like subsection 3. Subsection 3? Yeah, subsection 3. The rights specified subsection 2 are subject to A, any laws or practices of application and force in a province other than those discriminating among persons primarily on the basis of province of present or previous residence, and any law, B, any law providing a reasonable residency requirement as qualification for the receipt of publicly provided social services. So I'll just go under legal rights here. And like it says here, 7, everyone has a right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and a right not to be deprived thereof, except in ordinance with the principles of fundamental justice. So if you're not violating anybody. Alright, and of course you can do the search and seizure. Everyone has a right to be secured in a reasonable search and seizure, detention or imprisonment. 9, everyone has a right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. Okay, and we can just go a little bit down here. I think 12, section 12. We have here something in the background. Everyone has a right not to be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. That's things you got to look at too. Okay. And that's how far I'm going to go with this one, because I'm going to add that to my footnotes as well on this on this episode, so people could you can read more about it. And so let's just continue on here. Politicians and bureaucrats are not omniscient. The political purpose to the spread of the coronavirus demonstrates that the government does not recognize any limits to its authority. Politicians consider themselves to be omniscient as they formulate policy, i.e. government is always right. Control the mind and Latin, my friends, about government. Remember that. You to my fellow Canadians north of us, all right? The reality is that the various aspects of the pandemic, as with all pandemics, are incredibly complex. There is much that we don't know, meaning that politicians and bureaucrats do not have access to a sufficient amount of reliable data on which to justify their policies. However, we do know that millions of Canadians get the flu, which is contagious, resulting in about 3,500 deaths annually, compared to 21 deaths from the coronavirus as of March 22nd. But we don't see the government violating civil liberties under pretense of stopping the spread of the flu. More to the point, there's no justification for any government policy which violates civil liberties. If the government has any role in the coronavirus, it should be limited to the dissemination of information and advice. Advice, not orders. Individuals should be free to consider this information and advice, as well as that provided by other sources. Naturally, each of us will assess the risk differently, just as assess risk differently in other aspects of our lives. We must be free to make our own decisions based on our own circumstances. Those who believe that there is a high risk of contracting the virus and a high risk of severe symptoms of death will rarely leave their homes and will likely wear gloves and a mask if they do venture out. Those who believe that these risks are low will stick to their normal daily routines. Still others will modify their behavior to various degrees. Decisions must remain in the hands of those affected by them. In the past, whenever I made a decision to attend a hockey game, baseball game, or a music concert surrounded by thousands of other people, I accepted the fact that my decision could have unpleasant consequences. I could catch the flu from the person sitting next to me. Among the many thousands of people in attendance at these events, the odds are that one or more of them will have something that is contagious. I'm pretty sure that most of those realize this. Moreover, I think it is fair to say that the vast majority of people have, on one or more occasions during their lives, gone to school, to a job, a game or concert, to a party, to the mall, when they have a cold or flu, something else that is contagious. We all know this. We have seen it with our own eyes. The risk of infection cannot be eliminated, not even by the government. In fact, governments often make things worse when they take action in response to a supposed crisis. So, like I said, you gotta look at all those areas. But I'm gonna continue on here. Cabin fever. Aside from the violation of civil liberties, the government appears oblivious to other likely consequences of its policies. On March 12th, the National Hockey League temporarily suspended its season, and players were asked to isolate themselves. 1 week later, Rich Winter, a player's agent, said, "One player I reached on the phone was driving somewhere, and I said, 'Where are you headed?' And he said, 'I don't know, but my wife needs to get me out of the house as much as I need to get out of the house.' Though his player was not a government quarantine order, he left his home after just 1 week, and it is not surprising. We should expect serious consequences if the government continues to violate civil liberties. Forcible confinement in one's home may result in high levels of mental stress and anxiety, not only for those confined, but also for their families or roommates. This compound stress and anxiety, which many of them may already be experienced as a result of losing employment, income because the government has shut down numerous businesses. Furthermore, stress and anxiety weakens the immune system, which means that these people will be easier targets for COVID-19, which is contrary to the government's supposed goal of limiting its spread. Finally, with high levels of stress and anxiety led to more suicides, homicides, domestic violence, and divorces. The variations levels of government in Canada have responded to the coronavirus pandemic. Their ill-advised solutions are to inflict economic hardship and withdraw civil liberties. The longer these authoritarian policies persist, the greater risk to the social fabric. That means they're going to make it a lot worse for what it is. And people that know heard my show enough times, I gave my intake on COVID-19, coronavirus, and all that. And for me, I've been pretty blessed. I'm not taking things for granted. But I always believe in voluntary basis. I'm mostly a loner, but it's just people I meet. Yeah, I take that risk too. And in due time, I used to get sick a lot when I was a kid, but now I rarely do, even in hot South Florida during the summer times, which is amazing. But the bottom line is this: I said before, be vigilant on your health. There's lots of information out there. on how to counter viruses. Remember, even though it may be a bioweapon, synthetic, it has an Achilles heel, like everything else. So superfoods are important. Government's not going to tell you that, but I know like-minded folks will. Blueberries, all that, vitamin C, hit the sun, has vitamin D. Don't just be sick in your cave and be in the dark because, and if you have anxiety and high stress, yeah, it's gonna hurt you. It's like hatred. If you hold a lot of grudges, you're gonna get rid of real quick. Don't want to curse yourselves and your loved ones. So do what you can, be productive, and in due time, hey, we'll find ways of getting around this. And maybe a few things may be different, but hopefully be for the better, not for the worse, including authoritarianism. It's happening around the world, including the United States as well, with the states. People like to finger point, blame some people. To me, that's a big joke, and it's politicizing. Don't even pay attention to those hacks. I see it on my Facebook page all the time. When I blame the president, they want to blame. I'm like, it's pathetic. So, you guys have natural born rights regardless where you're at. Exercise them wisely. And take care of yourselves and each other. And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download the show at the social media network. If you have any questions or comments, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. Furthermore, I'll just leave the footnotes of this article and today the canon Constitution on my speaker page. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.